Hello, I hope that you are doing great. We are going to continue with chapter 9, in which basically what we are going to do now is to create one database with two tables that are connected among them. Okay, let's move on. Here basically what you have is the boilerplate number 2, and the first thing that I have done is to create a virtual environment. I activate it as in the previous video. What we have to do is to install the two versions of Flash and Flash SQL commit that are compatible, and then I go to the terminal and I type pip install -r requirements txt. Okay, the installation have concluded. Then now basically what I do is to close the terminal, and here we have basically the boilerplate. We have Flash SQL commit. Here we have a final location for the database. We define it, and we finish the previous video with defining this table. What we are going to do now is to create a second table that is class. It's going to be transport db model, and here basically what we are going to do is to define the name of the table name equal to transport table, and here basically we are going to create an ID that is going to be db column. It's going to be an integer, and it's going to be a primary key equal true. And basically now what we have to do is to introduce another field that is going to be kilometers. It's going to be db column, and this is going to be a float. And finally we have to introduce an user. Okay, this is basically what we have to define the table, and basically now what we have to do is to connect these two tables. And to do that we have to introduce in the user, we have to introduce a new line that is called to be transport. This is going to be db relationship, then basically this is going to be connected to the class transport with capital letters, and we have to use a backref. Backref is going to be author and lazy equal true. This is the first thing. Basically this is the first thing that we have to introduce in that table to connect it with the other table, with the transport table. And here basically this is the second thing that we have to introduce in the transport table, and here is basically transport ID db column, and here is going to be db integer db, and here is going to be the foreign key is going to be equal to user table .id. This is going to be the connection with the other table, and basically this have to be annullable equal false. This field have to be always filled. Okay, and that's all. This is basically what we need to create a database with two tables. We have to define the two tables, and we have to connect them by introducing one line extra in each single table. Then we go again to the terminal as in the previous video. I'm going to make this a little larger, and here basically I type Python, And inside the Python terminal, I have to write from application import db. And now basically we have to type db create all. And we have created a database as before here. Now we have to start to populate it, and I would like to populate it with very simple. It's basically from application import the class user, and we start to use that. Is user1 is equal to user in capital letters, user name equal to Bjork, then we are going to add this db session add user1, then we can create another user2 equal to user username equal to field db session add user2, and now db session commit. Okay, we have added these two users, and now we have to populate also the table, the transport table, and basically we have to do the next thing is basically from application import transport, the class transport, okay, it's from, not form. And now basically we have to transport 1 is equal to transport kims equal, for example, 10, and user ID is going to be equal to user 1 ID. We have to we have to have this db session add transport 1. We can do the same with, for example, we can add another transport. It's going to be transport 2. Now it's going to be, for example, 15 kilometers, and the user is going to be the same, the user ID 1. Okay. Now we commit this, we add transport 2, and finally we have to commit this db session commit, and then basically the last thing that we are going to do is to do some queries. I'm going to create a variable that is called transport 1 is equal to transport query first, and then basically now we have access to this variable, for example, transport 1 user ID, for example, this is 1. We can also transport 1 author username, for example, this is Bjork, and finally we can do exactly the same, but for example, transport 1 kilometers, and this is 10. Okay, this is basically some basic queries. As I told you before, if we go, for example, we want to visualize this in a graphical user interface, we can go here. We are going to open a database. I have to go to my boilerplate number 2. I open this, and I open this database. And here now what we have is two tables. We have a user table and we have a transport table. And if we go to browse data, here we have a transport table that we have introduced 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers from user 1. That user 1, if you go to user table, is Björk. Okay. I suggest you to go to the terminal and play a little more with this, and also introduce some more data and do some queries and go here and check how this works. Okay. Then basically this concludes the second video in chapter 9, in which basically what we have done is to create one database with two tables, and we have populated these two databases and we have introduced some queries. Okay, hope that you have enjoyed the video. See you in the next video.